Read. Well, let's start it off. Yeah, I'd like to learn more. I guess we'll start off with Peter. Peter, let's start with your career pathing and where you started and how you got here.
Yeah, I'm probably pretty atypical in the industry in that I had this whole other kind of career in live action, doing live action storyboards mostly, and I had never thought of animation as my professional career, path or destination. I was always, live action all the way until I had worked with Aaron Warner, who produced the movie Tank Girl that I storyboarded and directed second unit on. Aaron, of course, went on to produce the Shrek movies, and he kind of enticed me over to DreamWorks Animation to check it out. And at the time that at the time I finally said yes, CG animation was just starting to kind of come into its own. So it was an exciting time, and I sort of dived in, not expecting to stay for very long, and ended up loving it, loving the place, loving the people, and falling in love with the medium, and just getting a real immersion in it, from learning story to kind of learning the development process over at DreamWorks. And that all, after I guess 4+ years there, it kind of culminated in me getting the feature Rise of the Guardians.
I was drawing cartoons for like a junior college paper and everything, and just started doing stand-up comedy, and did stand-up for about a decade, starting in San Francisco and then moving here to Los Angeles, and drawing a lot of cartoons for like the LA Weekly, and doing stand-up, happy but broke as a joke. And then I was like, how can I take these skills and put them into a marketable, industry or whatever? And I made my very first short, and it got into the very first short I made it into Annecy, HBO Aspen Comedy Festival, all these festivals all around the world. And I was like, I think this is fate telling me to give up on everything else and pursue a miserable career in animation. It's not miserable.
So I'm originally from Mexico. So wanting to be an animator, especially in Mexico in my era, it's like trying to be Batman or like the Pope. It just seemed impossible. And I love painting, and I love writing, and I loved movies. And a family friend said that's cartoons, but that just seemed impossible. And so my dad, who was an architect, said, well, you can go to architecture school and become an architect and then do cartoons on the side for fun, but you can't do that stuff in Mexico. So my big sort of thing with him was, he said, well, find the best school of animation in the world for that. And if you can get in, maybe I'll let you study that. And my dad has always sort of put ever since I was a kid, he realized that the bigger the wall, the more I would want to climb it. So he always sort of fueled that fire. And so I went to Cal Arts, and like a lot of people that went there, they thought they were really good when they got in, and then you realize, oh no, I'm pretty much awful. And so going to Cal Arts was a very humbling experience, to be surrounded by talent from all over the world. And then I was there, I was very lucky, and I had a lot of scholarships and a lot of grants from the government. Mexican government still supported the arts back then. And so I got to go for 6 years. So I did my bachelor's and my master's. And what that did was I got to see what happened to people when they graduated. And I got to see that being a really good student didn't mean anything if you didn't have a good attitude and you weren't good at playing with others. And also I got to see that being a bad student didn't necessarily mean that was the end of the road if you were really good at networking and really good at sort of being at the right place when the jobs were happening. So that was a huge, I feel like that was my third learning experience, seeing what happened to people after they graduated. What happens to foreigners like me is when you graduate, the US gives you 1 year to find a job. And if you don't find a job, they deport you. They literally kick you back to your country. So I was terrified that I was going to have a bachelor's and a master's degree, and I was going to go back to Tijuana, which is where I grew up and my parents were there. And I was going to be, I was going to know basically something that literally no one there did. So I was going to be the most, the best animator making tacos in the border because there was no jobs. So my motivation was I have to get a job. I can't, all this faith, all this effort that my family has, bled for, I can't let them down. I have to get a job. And then at the same time, I can't let my people down and not make things to celebrate my culture. So, I grew up Catholic, so I love putting on all that guilt, and especially in school, I was trying to surf that fear of what the hell, how am I going to get a job? How am I not going to get deported? And then the best thing that could ever happen to me was I did a CG short because that's where all the jobs were. And that's where lots of people were terrified in school of doing CG. So I killed myself doing the CG short. It was, I was super lucky and I won the Student Emmy. And then I got a job offer, with all due respect, on episode 1. And I did not think if I went there to do previs that I could ever get to make things about Mexico, especially at Lucasfilm, right? So I turned that job down. And I remember the recruiter, like a witch, she told me, "You will regret this the rest of your life. The choice you made." The year of trying to get a job was running out, and my dad was so disappointed that I didn't take that job. But I told him, "Dad, this is a game of chess. If I make that move now, I will never get to make my own stuff." And he was like, "You ignorant boy! Like, what? Why does that even matter? Get a job." And so, with the weight of all those things happening, I grabbed a pirate software version of Flash, the super crappy early version of Flash, and I taught myself Flash after spending 3 years learning Softimage and Maya. I taught myself Flash in 2 weeks. I made a tiny short, and I put it on the internet. This is in the year 2000. It got 20,000 views in one night, which is a ton for the year 2000. And then the next day, Sony Pictures, I had done an internship on Stuart Little. One of the producers there said, "Hey, I saw your short. I sent it to everybody. They loved it. Come in for a meeting." And they said, "Jorge, we loved your little short. We want to buy, 25 of them, and we want to give you a work visa." And I thought, this is the greatest country in the world. You literally, you can make your own future. You can steal software and create a career. And that was it. That was the beginning of my career. So it really messed me up because I thought that was normal. Like everybody was going to get their own shows and everybody was going to get their own movies. But once you tasted that honey, you get addicted. You want, after my show got canceled, I was like, I can't wait to try to get it again. And it was super, 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 it was the best experience to be able to be given that freedom. But at the same time, I was very aware that it's really tough. So I just like Peter, I don't think my career path is that secure. I always say Hollywood is a bank and we all broke into the bank in different ways, but the security and the safes keep changing. Yeah. And so people have to figure out new ways to break in.
That's a great analogy.
But there's money in those vaults.
The reason I even got into animation was, like most kids and probably a lot of people watching, I loved drawing growing up. And I think all kids like to draw, or pretty much all kids like to draw. And then at a certain point, maybe someone tells them that's not anything, you can do anything with it, or, maybe someone discourages them, or maybe they just lose interest. But I loved drawing as a kid. I still love to draw. And my dad owned a model train store in the Valley. I'm pointing that way because it was in North Hollywood. And it was right near Hanna-Barbera and not too far from Disney and Filmation and some other studios. And at that time, a lot of people who collected model trains were also people who worked in animation, like obviously Ward Kimball and Walt Disney loved toy trains. But I remember whenever any animator came in to my dad's train store, he would say, "Oh, my daughter wants to learn animation. How can she do that? And is it a real job?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's totally a job. It's a real thing to do." And I feel lucky because I feel like a lot of kids don't know that it's a real thing that they can do and earn a living at. If I didn't grow up near those studios, maybe I wouldn't, if I really wanted it, like many people do, figure it out and you get out here and do it.
But my journey is a little similar to Jorge's. I'm from Mexico as well, and I came to the U.S. like 14 years ago to study animation, and went to CalArts, and that's where I really found the community like I'd never seen before of people who've seen these movies obsessively, who like to draw, who were like similar interests as me, and yeah, like I really felt the challenge of it all then. Like it was like I didn't know Photoshop or anything, or like the complexity of like animation and stuff, and it really had great teachers there and great mentors that really like showed me and show my friends like how to, you know, move along your journey, find your own voice. Like the faculty really encourages to be artists, but also like, you know, like be aware of the industry, be aware of the jobs. And you feel like you have to balance both. And literally we had like, at CalArts, we had that sort of like night faculty that is people who work in the industry and like do this like part-time, you know, tell us the realities and the hardships of work. And you like, and then in the mornings we have life drawing, and it was like, be artistic, be free, like forget about the industry, you know? So it's like a little bit of like both that you kind of like take in, and you go forward with that, you know? And after I graduated, my first opportunity was at Disney TV animation, and actually got that job through the job fair at CalArts. And so it was like, it's really amazing how, you know, it's truly a generation that comes in, and you kind of like the people who are there before you help you out, and kind of like are sort of like are linking each other through this path. And I was working on Gravity Falls, so season 1. I came in as a storyboard artist, and that was like another school. That was another like eye-opening experience, because it was a very special like show. We gave it a lot of energy, we gave it a lot of love, and learned a lot about comedy, and learned about like, you know, like putting the heart in the characters and stuff. So we were like really trusted to make this as good as we could. And that show really became like really like a stepping stone for all of us. Mike Rianda, who's directing a movie at Sony, he connected. He came from Gravity Falls, and Shion Takeuchi worked on Gravity Falls as well. Mike is working with her, and you know, like so it really like was like a sort of like a cauldron, like a cauldron of people doing stuff, and then later on, I had the opportunity to work on the Mickey shorts, which was basically like I got a chance to do the shorts that are like little movies, and basically like a really contained, compressed story, and each of the directors kind of get to infuse their sensibilities in the shorts. So it was just very special in that way, you know, like you really explore like what type of music you like, what type of comedy you like, and it was like it has to be really fast and really tight. So it's like a really good exercise. So yeah, just been very fortunate to have like a lot of amazing mentors throughout this path, and currently what I was really looking forward was to explore like stories that have to do with like representation and mental health and LGBTQ stories. And I had the chance to work with Rebecca Sugar, which like Steven Universe is at the forefront of that. And so, yeah, it was like an amazing time to work on the movie and on the epilogue of the series. And that takes me to today.
That's so great. Now I'm going to ask you and you all the same questions. I'll start with Peter. I know he's got limited time. What were some of the hurdles you had to jump through to keep your career going?
You know, my very biggest hurdle was right at the beginning, and I didn't talk about how I got into live action storyboarding, which was really my entry into the industry, period. But the biggest hurdle was not even knowing that I could do it. Kind of like Jorge, You know, I grew up here in South Central LA, 10 miles from Hollywood, but had no inkling that I could ever work in the movie industry. No connections, I didn't know anybody. I'd gone to UCLA to study fine arts, but dropped out after 2 years. I was just too young, didn't understand art, got disillusioned and confused, and just like kind of a little kind of questioning my own definition of myself as an artist, because the broader art world was a lot more complex and sophisticated than what I understood, just drawing really good, but that confusion and that little crisis kind of led me to understand what I was really interested in was narrative art and drawing to tell stories. So, but like I said, no connections to the movie industry, no, understanding that I could actually work in it or be a part of it, until I started meeting a few friends who were sort of nibbling on the outskirts of the industry. And I was kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Is this how it works? Do real people, kind of find a way and work in this industry? And just the light bulb started going off, and I found out, I had seen storyboards before for movies. I had seen my little Star Wars storyboards and Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever, but the light bulb went off, and I was like, well, that's basically what I want, what I already kind of do. Because I was trying to draw comics, and I thought maybe I'd be a comic book artist, maybe I'll be an illustrator. But seeing, kind of realizing, oh my God, people get jobs drawing storyboards to work in movies. And I was like, well, I want to be a director. I can't afford to make films. I can't really afford to go to film school. Maybe I can try to get my my toe in the water of storyboarding, and in that way kind of start climbing up the rungs of the ladder to, be in the industry. So what basically happened was I applied to this, to an agency that represented storyboard artists for advertising, and they were moving into repping people for film. So I tried once, got rejected. 6 months later, and I'm working at minimum wage jobs pretty much all up until then. 6 months later, I run into the guy who owned the agency, and he told me to try again. So I did. I got accepted, and then I spent a year storyboarding, every kind of commercial you can imagine. And at the end of that year, they got me my first film, and it was a film that never got made, but it got me. I had samples now, and I had a little more experience under my belt. And so that having those samples kind of got me other work, and it just sort of started snowballing from there. And during the 90s, I was storyboarding on all kinds of, big features. I worked with John Singleton a lot, like you said, Boys in the Hood. I did Fight Club. I worked with Ang Lee. I did a couple of Spielberg films. So I was like kind of all over the map. So really the only hurdle I really had was at the very beginning of knowing that it was even possible.
To kind of backtrack into my story, I actually did, I was doing stand-up, and I did apply to CalArts when after I made this film and it got into ANSI. I was like, oh, maybe I should make animation my career. And I got rejected by CalArts, but they said to reapply in a year. And but then I just started, like Jorge, I discovered, I was taking some Maya classes, but boy, yeah, it really takes a lot of time to make something with Maya. But like Jorge, I discovered Flash, and I just had a natural propensity for jokes and humor. And you could just bang out a short like every day.
Oh yeah.
And I was on Newgrounds, like throwing on Newgrounds. And I don't know where your film was, Jorge, but on that Newgrounds, it's like I was putting a short up, and by the end of the week, it was viewed by like 1 million people.
Mine was on Icebox.
Oh, okay.
And people could just submit stuff, and but I'm telling you, like, it changed my life. And now people can easily upload their student films up there, and it could change your life like that. When teachers in school say, hey, you're a student short, we'll represent you, and it's your calling card, it's true. It really is, because you tell somebody, hey, I'm really funny, they go, all right, let me see your short.
Well, I just made.
I spend so much time as a recruiter and helping to feed our development department. I'm on Vimeo, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, everything all the time, trying to find that next talent.
I've worked on jobs. I remember on one of my first jobs for Comedy Central, this show called Kid Notorious. I remember the guys who were the animation directors, they on the last day of the gig, they made a point of somebody and they fired them on the last day. And then on their very next job, that they were working together, but they were equals. They had a different animation supervisor, and the guys who like made a big stink out of firing this guy were now just animators with him. It's like, ooh, you can't do like that because this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
You got to try to be cool and just go like, oh, that guy was not great to work with. Why don't I'm just gonna clock that and kind of, when I'm staffing something up, just be aware that maybe I don't want him, but I can't make big public spectacles for petty reasons or whatever.
I mean, one of the things that I want to bring up is, especially for people who've just graduated or who are struggling to find a job, the struggle is normal. Every single person goes through it. But creators, everybody struggled. Obviously, there's exceptions, like with everything, but almost everybody had to work their way. Yeah, Alonso, Ramsey.
When I asked that, yeah.
Most people go through that struggle and rejection, right? Rejection is a part of this industry, and you can't, I know it sounds terrible, but you can't take that stuff personal. Yeah. You got to have the heart of a poet and the endurance of a boxer to get through this stuff. But know that if you can get over that hump, you might not have your dream job in the beginning. Just get a job. Just get in there. Start learning. Start picking. The more experienced people's brains. Start creating your network, and then sky's the limit.
That's it.
And that first job is hard to get.
Yeah,
I remember when I was trying to get that first job, because also I didn't go to CalArts, but I just made so much stuff. I remember, but I applied, but I was on the outside. And when I finally got the job, the guy I think he was weirded out that I was a crazy person because I had made so much stuff. And then once I was in and I proved that I was reliable, when that job was over, my coworkers were like, hey, now we're going over this job. You want to come with us? And I was like, yeah, sure. They're like, all right, here's the guy's email. It's like, you're out and then you're in.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that, we keep saying CalArts, but as a recruiter, I go to schools all over the country and sometimes all over the world. There's SVA, NYU, RISD, SCAD, San Jose State, Cal State Fullerton. There are so many more schools. The reason we talk about CalArts is there were fewer options to go to. So anyone watching this, I just, wherever you can learn these things, whether you want to go to a program and learn them, that's great. And CalArts is still great. I teach there at night and I love it, but there's so many more resources. So we talk about CalArts a lot because that was what was available to us, but there's a lot of other options now. So.
And meanwhile, like when I first started working in animation, CalArts ruled over Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, but now it's switched to SVA. Like CalArts is Cartoon Network is all SVA kids who have all those shows. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of weird how the tides change,
And I also think now there's back in the day, printing a portfolio, all that stuff was super expensive, and you had to drop it off at studios, and they would lose it. Like I remember they lost my studio at Klasky Chupo, and to me, that was like $200.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. Now, obviously, put your stuff online. Be super smart about making the way for people to contact you easy. I can't emphasize how ridiculous it is to go to people's websites and there's no contact info. It's like going to a store and there's no cashier.
Yeah.
Like, what is this, a museum? Like, let me give you money. And then the other big one that I personally think is really important now is you have to be very smart about not talking trash about stuff that's being produced, because more than likely someone who's looking at your work will have worked on X show you hated or X movie you hated, and when
we
they
hated it
Google
too.
you, and they look you up and you're like, I fucking hated blah 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 blah, they will go, yeah, not gonna hire that guy.
Yeah, I worked on so much stuff I hated, but I didn't want other people talking trash about it.
Exactly.
Like when somebody else makes fun of your mom's cooking. You're
Yeah.
like, that's
Yeah,
my fault.
that's my mother.
Do what you got to do. You know,
I worked on John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. You can say anything bad about that you want.
I love that movie. It's the only movie with a flashback inside a flashback inside a flashback before Inception.
kind of cool. I'm very sorry. I have to go.
Aw, bye, Peter. Happy
You know what?
Father's Day.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been a real blast.
Oh, thanks for joining us, Peter. That was wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
We'll see you soon.
Keep the party going. Take care, guys.
Hey, bye, Peter.
I wanted to say something about setting goals, and it's really important to have goals and try to reach them, but also to be open-minded about what your career path is going to be. Like, don't be too stuck in, I'm just going to do this, or I'm just going to work at that studio. Be open to all sorts of possibilities, because right now the studios that exist, there's going to be different studios maybe when you graduate. Like there's so many new technologies and new platforms to work in. So don't be too hard on yourself. I know sometimes I had a student who was just so worried about turning 30 and not having reached certain goals by the time they didn't have their own show by the time they were 30. I was like, well, maybe you'll have a show when you're 32. Like, it's not, it's not the end of the world. It is a long game, and just, always do your best and learn what you can and absorb and help each other out, help your artist friends. Maybe you'll help someone who, will then bring you onto their show someday. Just try to relax about the big picture. I mean, be relaxed about it, but also work hard, both.
And piggybacking on what Peter said, it is always important to remember that animation, I think, is like the most collaborative of all the arts. Like even maybe if you're working live action, it seems like a live action film director maybe is more of a auteur, but it's harder to be maybe an auteur working in animation. It's just so collaborative. And animation is also super duper where art meets commerce. Like, it's all about budget and deadline, and it can be soul crushing on particular projects. That's why it's always really good to have some kind of short you're working on back at home where it can just be all your thing. Like, you're making all the decisions, you're making all the calls. It's all, Mike Hollingsworth, not some kind of constant compromise of ideas. And one thing I did learn over all those seasons of BoJack, which I found really comforting, is that a good idea never dies. And I know all these guys know what I'm talking about, because so many times there would be a concept that I would be putting into the storyboards, and it didn't, the creator Raphael would shoot it down, but I would be like, I know this is a good joke. And it would, if it was really truly good, it would find a different place, and it would come back. I would keep all these great ideas on Post-it notes on the wall, and eventually they would make their way into the show, including this one that I tried to put in season 1, where there was a cat who was like a businessman, and he was up in a tree, and there are a bunch of firefighters trying to get him down, and he just said, sorry this keeps happening, guys. And he's like a cat in a suit holding his little briefcase stuck up in a tree. And I tried to get that into season 1, and it just kept getting axed. And then finally, in like one of the last episodes of season 6, the final season, that joke made it in. But I thought it was a good joke, and I never forgot it. So,
the world wasn't ready. It was just like 6 seasons to really get there.
And it's super meta with Save a Cat. So it works on multiple layers.
So what are some of the mistakes that you see young people coming into the industry make? whether it be in their art, it could be their attitude, but what are some of the things that you see that perhaps people should try and avoid or try to fix?
Well, one of the things that I see a lot of, and I made that mistake when I was starting out, was I would make my portfolio a buffet, and I would go, here's background designs, here's character designs, here's storyboards, here's stop motion sets. Like, it was like, whatever job you have, look at all the things I can do. And that doesn't work. You kind of have to be more of a specialist, and you kind of have to be a little more specific. And especially in TV and in feature these days, you go, I want to be a storyboard artist. Here's my storyboard portfolio. I want to be a background artist, all background stuff. I want to be a character designer, all character design stuff. And then the thing, if you commit to those specifics, then you have to do the actual assumed work. Like, if you want to be a character designer, you can't say, I'll do expressions and turnarounds if you hire me. You got to show that you can do that stuff. Or if you're a background artist, you're like, well, my construction and my perspective is a little wonky, but if you hire me, I'll give it to you. Like, it's got to be in the work. All the fundamentals are assumed, but you still have to show them.
Hundreds, if not close to 1,000 portfolios a week. So some of my do's and don'ts would be definitely echoing what Jorge said, like, know what you want to do. Don't make the recruiter figure it out for you. Sometimes we have 10 jobs up and someone will apply for all of them. And it's like, that's kind of a strike against you, because you're telling me that you don't know what you want to do. And sometimes people who have no experience will apply for things like supervising director. And it's like, you're not ready to be a supervising director. So apply for the jobs that coincide with your level. For TV animation, some entry-level jobs on the design side would be like prop design and effects design. And for the story side would be like storyboard revisions. So, and then if you are someone who wants to work in animation, but you don't have drawing skills, but you just want to be around it, you can also apply for production assistant jobs, or you can work your way, if you have good timing and you're good with film, but you're not good with the actual drawing, you could go to the editing side too. So there's so many jobs in animation that maybe you didn't even ever think of that you could also have. A don't for me, a big don't, I think Jorge already said it, is having a portfolio but no email address. Like, yeah, I could Instagram message you, but I don't really want to be like this at work. So just make it easy for us to find you. We want to find you. So, wherever your artwork lives, have your email address available. Having those annoying things on your website where you have to fill out a thing to contact you, it's like, just put your email address and I'll just email you instead of having to fill out your dumb form to comment or contact you. Not that I won't do it. I have done it, but I have to really want to find you to do that. I'm not a super fan of LinkedIn as far as like showing your artwork, but it's not a bad idea to have a LinkedIn, just have one. And if you have your LinkedIn, instead of saying, I worked at Warner Brothers and then Nickelodeon and then Bento Box, like, say which show and what you did at each of those studios. And then another don't is password protecting things that don't need to be password protected. A password in your portfolio is a little bit of a speed bump for us. And I'm not lazy, so I will type in a password, but sometimes people are just busy and they don't have time to type in your password. So Mike does not type in passwords. So if it's something that hasn't aired and you need to protect it, then yes, there's a reason to have it password protected, but otherwise just let us see it. And the other thing is, I do think that it's important if you're in a school that makes you make a film to finish your films, because that really shows me your voice as an artist. I want to hear and see what your kind of storytelling is, because maybe you don't fit any of the shows that we have right now, but maybe you're someone who should be pitching to us at Bento Box. So I like to see a combination of your own personal voice and your personal work in your portfolio and in your films. And then I also like to see in your portfolio that you could adapt to other styles. So I know you're going to get different advice from every recruiter you talk to, but that's a little bit of mine.
Speaking of styles, when we were making BoJack, we would be hiring people for season 4, season 5, season 6. And it was always amazing that they would go off in weird directions. They'd do our background test, our character test. It's like, and if we're hiring you to work on season 5 of BoJack, like just you don't have to be a big fan of the show. Just turn on an episode and just copy what's on the screen. Like, why are you sending this weird thing that has nothing to do with the show when it's not in their portfolio. They're taking the BoJack background test and they're drawing something that looks like it would be on some Disney Channel preschool show or some H.R. Geiger or something. And I'm like, what is this? Where are you getting this from? It's just so weird how people come at these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and even happens in production, right? Because everyone wants to do the greatest job you can, right? Either it's a painting or a character design or something or a board, but like not every moment in the show can be like the jewel or the crowning star, right? So you have to know how it fits in the production, right? And you have to know what comes before, what comes after. So I think it's really good to be aware of what part you're working on and give it the right amount of energy. Like give it the right, like don't overwork it. Give it just the right amount, you know. And it's really hard. It's really hard to get there, to understand that, and be open to changes. I think like one of the worst things that we can do is just not be open to things evolving and changing, because by the nature of it, it will change. And you will get notes and from someone somewhere, you know. And I think so I think like what's important is to navigate those notes, like kind of like airbend it to be something that you like, you know. And yeah, I think that's really helpful.
Some of your work is going to get thrown away, especially because Alonso was working on a show that was more board driven with those Mickey shorts. So you're going to do some stuff and it's going to be great, but it's not going to work for whatever reasons. And it's going to get tossed away. And that is especially also going to happen on a script driven show that is the first season. The creators don't even know what the show is yet. They kind of have the basic idea, but they're finding it along with you, and your work is going to get thrown away because the creator is going to see something they wrote and go, oh, no, this character wouldn't do this. Because now I've written episode 9 and I'm reviewing episode 2 right now. And I know this character doesn't act this way because he has this bit of backstory that we find out later. So your work is going to get thrown away.
One more thing I want to say is know your audience. So know who you're applying to. Do your research. At Bento Box, we make Duncanville and Bob's Burgers and Central Park, Paradise PD, a bunch of other things. So if someone sends me an all CG portfolio or something with only preschool shows in it, I mean, we could do a CG show, we could do a preschool show, but if you're applying to a 2D animated primetime show, make sure that you have work in your portfolio that looks like you could do what we do. So
I had a producer literally sit me down and go, I love your work, but we can't hire you because nothing we make here, this is a Nickelodeon, nothing we make here looks like this. And I was like, oh. And he said, but I'm going to give you some advice. And to this day, he was totally right. The only person who's going to hire you to do this style is you.
Yeah.
I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you got to be sitting in my desk. So that means you have to create the show. So that means you have to be pitching the show. And you have to pitch shows until someone says yes. And they're going to reject you a million times, but that's normal. And then you can be on this side, and then you can hire yourself. And he was right. He was totally right. And he said, get a job on a regular show. Probably it's not going to be your thing, but you're going to learn. And if you want your own show, the only way to do it is to watch someone else make a show and then go, oh, that's how you do it, or that's how you don't do it. Or I'm going to take that from this experience and this from this experience and that from this experience. And again, almost everybody has gone through and made pilots and been in development. This is a path that hasn't changed in the last, it feels like 20 years since I started. So it's very similar. But I do think honing your craft, working on other people's shows, every show creator you know out there worked more than likely on somebody else's thing. You know, look at Alex Hirsch. He was working on fish hooks. Look at, Steven Hillenberg. He was working on Rocco. Like all your favorite show creators, with the, again, notable exceptions, worked on other people's shows before they got through their own show. Take COVID is your friend in that it's equalized everybody. So you are now getting to compete on an equal ground, I would say. The other great thing that's happened, thanks to all the social and political things that have happened in the world, is animation industry is listening, and they've been shamed into opening the door to talent that usually wasn't getting looked at. So if you're a Black artist, right now is a great time. Take advantage of what's happening. Women, it's never been this good. Minorities like myself, it's never been this good. This is your time. Take advantage of all this free time that we're getting. This is a great time to work on your stuff, a great time to put your stuff up on the internet, because the eyes are looking more than ever. And you, again, I'm jealous because I mean, you will get to brag about this for years to come, that you are the graduating class of 2020 and you survived the, fucking pandemic and murder hornets and all this stuff. Like, you will be bulletproof after this year. So take advantage of that. This is your time. Put all your stuff up there. This is your wave. You got to surf it.
So, right, the pandemic is actually kind of a blessing in disguise, isn't it?
For animation, yeah, we've been training for this our whole lives.
Yeah.
We didn't at Bento Box, we didn't miss one day of production. We were just like, everyone could work from home. We have studio in LA and in Atlanta, and we're all working. We are so busy. I post jobs every week. It is so busy right now. I mean, I feel terrible for my friends in live action and other friends that have lost jobs in this. I'm not celebrating COVID, but for animation, this is a defining moment.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You're not celebrating COVID like Jorge was. The headline from this panel would be, Jorge Gutierrez says COVID is the best thing that's ever happened
to me.
Only for Jorge. That's so wonderful. Everybody, thank you very much for being a part of this panel. It's been a pleasure being on
David,
screen with you
before
all.
we go, will you sing us a Johnny Cash song, as you are the new man in black?